Jesus answered the woman and said, if you knew the gift of God and who it is who says to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you what? Living water. Now what's a strange thing that Jesus is calling this living water? There's a lot of waters out there that we can buy on a commercial basis. And they're all vying for your dollar. They're all hyping up something spectacularly valuable for your health. You can go out there, for example, and you can buy something like pie water. Or you can buy colloidal mineral water. Or you can buy what they call glacial milk. The list is enormous. It's all this hype, and we all kind of get sucked in and think, oh, it's something tremendous for our health. And then Jesus comes along with living water. And we say, well, hold on just a moment. Living water. How would you define living? If you were asked to define life, how would you define it? It's not as easy, in fact, as what you might think. And scientists and philosophers have struggled across the centuries trying to give a neat definition for what is life. What constitutes life? And, they struggle to determine the wheres and the hows and the whens of the origin of life, but they still can't yet even agree really on what even constitutes life. I've got a rock in one hand and I've got a little baby chicken in the other. One, we say, is just inanimate. The other one is living. Well, why so? What makes this living and this one not? So I looked up a few definitions and I went to one dictionary. And when you see a dictionary giving a long definition, you know that they're struggling. So this was one. The condition which distinguishes animals and plants from inorganic objects and dead organisms. Well, that's kind of a bit of a circular sort of bit of reasoning, and that really doesn't get you anywhere. But it continues on. The distinguishing manifestations of life are growth through metabolism, reproduction, and the power of adaptation to environment through changes originating internally. Okay, that's good, I like that. So then I went to a different place. I went to one of the most prestigious scientific journals in the world, and it's called Science. And there's a biologist by the name of Dr. Koshland, back in 2002, who wrote an essay where he attempted to define life. And he suggested that something could be deemed to be alive if it meets the following 7 criteria, and it must meet the following 7 criteria, and I'd like to share these with you. Number 1, living things must have a program to make copies of themselves from generation to generation, and we would know that as DNA. Number 2, life adapts and evolves in step with external changes in the environment. Number 3, organisms tend to be complex, highly organised, and most importantly, have compartmentalised structures. Number 4, living things must have the ability to take energy from their environment and change it from one form to another. Number 5, organisms have regeneration systems that replace parts of themselves that are subject to wear and tear. When I ride my bicycle, and I've been getting a lot of flat tyres recently because somewhere I've been running over some prickles on the ground, if it was a living thing, when that flat tyre goes flat, it would regenerate itself and it would fix itself, but my bicycle tyre doesn't do that. I wish that it did. Number 6, living creatures respond to environmental stimuli through feedback mechanisms. And number 7, organisms are able to maintain numerous metabolic reactions even in a single instance in time. Jesus is here speaking about what type of water? Living water. So I ask you the question, based upon those 7 definitions, would you consider water that we drink to be living? Good answer. And how old are you? How old are you? 6. So I have a 6-year-old in the congregation who straight off says, no, you're dead right. Water is not living. It doesn't meet any of the classifications of a living thing. You know, it's just like when your bottle starts to get empty when you drink it, the water doesn't just miraculously just refill itself every time you drink it. It's not a living thing. It doesn't multiply itself. Well, here we find the woman at the well doesn't probably know much about science behind the physical properties of water, but she knew enough to realize that the water that Jesus was speaking about was very different from the water that she was daily coming to draw from Jacob's well. But she still wasn't grasping the full impact of what Jesus was saying here, for Jesus was clearly using this as an analogy for something else, something eternal, something spiritual, and she wasn't grasping that. Take a look at verse 15. The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water that I may not thirst nor come here to draw." She wasn't quite getting it. But come back to verse 11, because it's clear that the woman still knew that something was different about this water, because we saw in verse 10 Jesus made reference to the water as living water, and notice what the woman says in verse 11. The woman said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where then do you get that living water?" The woman repeated, she didn't say, "Where are you going to get that water?" She says, "Where are you going to get that living water?" What astronomers and astrophysicists are searching for in their quest for extraterrestrial life is any evidence of what? Water. Why is that? Because as far as we are concerned, and God offers, He operates in a different realm, but as far as we are concerned, water is synonymous with life. We know that water is indispensable to life as we know it. It supports life without itself being living. Speaking of the physical properties of water, water is one of the most amazing substances. I remember one of the gentlemen in our church last year told us, and I'd not thought of this before, you go through years and years and years of studying science, and yet it just sort of doesn't sort of impact you in the way in which this story impacted me. He told this children's story, which I won't repeat to you, but he did mention that water is made up of two different kinds of atoms. They are hydrogen and oxygen. Well done. So 2 parts of hydrogen to 1 part of oxygen. That's what makes up water. Hydrogen is a highly combustible substance. Oxygen helps to combust, and yet you combine the two together and it helps to put out fires. Like, what an interesting concept. For years I've had actually a strong attraction and interest in water, and particularly with the hydrotherapeutic healing modalities. Amongst the books, some of the books that I treasure the most is a 2-volume set, and it's a large volume, 2 large volumes, called Rational Hydrotherapy, written by no one other than the infamous Dr. John Harvey Kellogg. I personally studied under the great Dr. Charles Thomas there in California, who, as some of you may recognise, was a man who loved hydrotherapy and who had an outfit there in Desert Hot Springs. And he spent a lifetime studying hydrotherapy and teaching students and treating patients with hydrotherapy. What makes water so attractive as a healing modality? There are a number of different things, and I'd like to share some of those with you. Number one, it's abundant. It's ubiquitous. Everywhere you turn, well, I guess there's some places on this earth where water is not so abundant. And I realise that right here, Adelaide is the driest capital city in Australia, and I've lived in Hobart, which is the second driest capital city. But generally, it's abundant. Secondly, its biochemical properties. We are made up principally of water. We are approximately 70% water by weight. And as one author has said about water, water is much more than just a nutrient. It is the physiologic river upon which vital nutrients navigate the pathways of metabolism. Without water, all other nutrients are as parched silt and sand at the bottom of a dry riverbed.